What if the very foundations of American identity, forged in fire and blood, hold a story that's far more nuanced than we often remember? A story that really demands a closer look at how it's been told. Today, we're looking closely at a landmark work, this Hallowed Ground by Bruce Catton.
Catton, a giant Pulitzer winner, known for just incredible narrative history, really getting into the human side of the Civil War.
Exactly. And his core idea here is powerful, right? That the Civil War was this huge American tragedy, but also its greatest test of moral purpose, with consequences for identity, freedom, justice, lasting consequences.
Yeah, and he frames it fundamentally as a struggle to preserve the Union and then ultimately to make that promise of liberty real for everyone.
And the subtitle is key, The Story of the Union Side of the Civil War. So right away, you know the perspective.
Definitely a Northern viewpoint.
Right.
And it's a single volume narrative history. It's meant to be accessible, popular, but it's still deeply scholarly stuff.
Published in 1956. Think about that timing early civil rights era. And it famously draws on his childhood, listening to Civil War veteran stories.
You are experiencing a unique two-host AI conversation powered by Google's NotebookLM for deeper, more dynamic book critique.
And our mission with this discussion is pretty clear. We want to offer you an in-depth, comprehensive critique of this really pivotal book. We'll look at the arguments, the strengths, the limitations, give you a really well-rounded understanding, but importantly, no narrative spoilers.
Right. So where do we start? How does Catton actually build his case in the book? Let's look at his major claims and the evidence.
Okay. Claim 1. He takes this absolutely unflinching stance. The Civil War's central issue was slavery. Period. Not states' rights. He really doesn't back down from that.
No, he doesn't. And it's fascinating how he builds it. He doesn't just state it. He shows you. He illustrates how pervasive slavery was in Southern society,
Right.
He details the whole fugitive slave crisis, how that escalated things, and he paints the Emancipation Proclamation as this huge moral turning point, not just politics.
Yeah.
And he points to the contrabands, the runaway slaves flocking to Union lines. That sheer number showed how slavery was becoming impossible to maintain during the war. He even argues, pretty compellingly, that even if the Confederacy had somehow won, slavery probably wouldn't have survived in the long run. Its own internal contradictions were too great.
That really sets the stage. Okay, claim 2. The Union win affirmed democratic government and advanced freedom's cause. How does the narrative structure support that idea?
Well, he structures it very carefully. He meticulously traces the key battles, shows how Union strategy evolves over time, and really highlights Lincoln's political and, crucially, his moral leadership. It's quite telling, I think, that he ends the book not just with Appomattox, the surrender.
Right, not just the military win.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He ends with Lincoln's assassination. That choice really underscores Catton's point that the war's resolution wasn't just military, it was moral, it was constitutional, affirming the Union in a deeper way.
And, of course, you can't discuss the Civil War without the human cost. Claim 3 gets right at that. Immense suffering, immense cost, but sacrifice created this sense of, sacred duty. His writing is incredibly powerful here.
Oh, absolutely. He excels at that. The book is just filled with these vivid, almost poetic descriptions. Gettysburg, Chattanooga. You feel the brutality.
Yeah.
Doesn't shy away from the loss, the endurance, but then he connects it to the soldiers, feeling they had this higher purpose, this sacred duty. It gives meaning, somehow, to all that sacrifice, forging a new identity out of it.
Beyond the battles, Claim 4 looks at the bigger picture. The war reshaped American society and government. Fundamentally, what changes does he zoom in on?
That's a big one. How does a society change under that kind of pressure? Catton gets into the details. The draft, for instance. The sheer scale of economic mobilization needed. The absolutely critical role of railroads for moving troops and supplies. And maybe most importantly, the massive expansion of federal power.
Right, that shift in power.
Yeah. And he shows how each of these huge changes was directly linked to what the war demanded. It just altered the basic fabric of the nation.
Okay, finally, Claim 5 is about the people. Northern leaders, ordinary soldiers, flawed, sure, but they came to see the war as a moral fight. It's about that evolving understanding, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. His portrayals of Lincoln, Grant, Sherman, but also just regular soldiers are really key. He focuses on their words, their actions. He avoids, deep psychoanalysis. Instead, he cites how they increasingly recognize slavery as evil and how abolition became necessary. He shows their understanding deepening from just saving the Union to fighting for freedom. It's a gradual, powerful shift in the book.
Okay, so we've laid out his main arguments. Let's maybe dig a bit deeper. What kind of truth is Catton actually presenting? If we use this idea of an epistemic lens, asking, how does he know this? What kind of truth is it? How does that apply here?
That's a really useful way to look at it, because not all historical writing is the same kind of fact. With Catton, some things, like his characterizations of leaders' motives or the ultimate moral meaning of the war, those feel more like interpretations. They're his reasoned opinion based on the evidence, but still an interpretation.
Oh, okay.
But then you have the sequence of events, the details of battles, the political moves, the role slavery clearly played in secession. That's all built on solid primary sources, letters, documents, historical research. That's clearly knowledge.
Right, the factual backbone.
Exactly. Where Catton really excels, I think, is in understanding. He's brilliant at connecting the dots, military, political, social, showing how all that chaos and suffering led somehow to a more unified nation, even if, as he implies, it wasn't fully just yet.
And then there's wisdom.
Yeah, I think so. What's striking is how Catton, writing back in the 50s, subtly points to the incompleteness of that justice. He sort of lays the groundwork for understanding the civil rights struggles to come. That's quite nuanced for the time. The book really wrestles with the war's long-term meaning for American democracy, for civil rights, for how we remember it all. It invites you, the reader, to reflect deeply on what freedom costs and what it means.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more using another lens. How balanced is the narrative? If we think about reciprocity, whose stories get told, whose might be missing?
That's a fair question. Thinking of reciprocity, Catton is definitely empathetic. You feel for the Union soldiers, for the newly freed slaves he describes, for ordinary citizens caught up in it all.
Right.
But it's definitely less focused on the experiences of Southern civilians or non-combatants. He doesn't demonize them, let's be clear, but their perspective isn't the central one.
So there's a kind of asymmetry.
Exactly. A moral asymmetry. He's absolutely direct about slavery's brutality and the Confederacy's dependence on it. Uncompromising. But because of that necessary focus, he doesn't spend as much time exploring how, say, former Confederate experienced Reconstruction or the whole difficult process of national healing from their side.
So applying something like the Golden Rule here highlights the limits.
Precisely. It reminds us that a truly, fully reciprocal history would need to give more voice to those who were, in many ways, marginalized by the Union victory, even as it brought freedom for others. You'd need more on Southern African Americans facing Jim Crow, poor Southern whites, maybe indigenous peoples whose lives were also impacted. Perspectives largely outside Catton's specific scope here.
So thinking about the big picture, the foundation of American ideals, the preamble to the Constitution, how does Catton's account measure up against those promises? Form a more perfect union, establish justice, and so on.
That's a powerful way to frame it. Okay, form a more perfect union. The war's outcome undeniably strengthened the federal government, forged a stronger national identity. Catton shows this clearly, but also the immense cost involved. He illustrates it through that expansion of government power and the sense of unified purpose that emerged.
And establish justice.
Well, abolishing slavery was obviously a monumental step towards justice. Huge. But Catton is careful, isn't he? He acknowledges that the road ahead was still incredibly long and difficult, especially for African Americans who immediately faced new forms of oppression. That shows his nuanced view of what justice really meant post-war.
And for those moments when you need to truly digest complex narratives like this, remember Mindful Moments, our YouTube channel for AI book analysis and critiques. It's a great way to deepen your engagement and inspire rational thought.
Absolutely. Good place to pause and reflect on these big ideas.
Okay, building on that, let's look at the book's structure itself. Logically speaking, how does this hallowed ground hold up? What are its real strengths there? Where might the focus create gaps? And what questions does it maybe leave hanging for the reader?
Logically, it's very strong. Catton's narrative is remarkably coherent. He lays out these clear causal chains. Political crisis leads to war. War leads to emancipation, which leads towards national renewal. It flows. And his use of primary sources, that meticulous detail we talked about, it really supports his conclusions, makes them feel solid, compelling.
But potential gaps, too, stemming from that Union focus.
Right. Because it is focused on the Union side, some Southern perspectives just aren't as developed. That's the nature of the project. And while Catton avoids, obvious logical fallacies, sometimes the narrative maybe assumes a kind of moral clarity. might slightly oversimplify the motivations of ordinary Southerners, doesn't fully explore the whole range of reasons they fought.
And any unresolved questions it leaves us with.
Well, it hints at things, but doesn't fully dive into them, given its one volume. Like, how exactly did the war's legacy shape the later civil rights movement? He sets the stage, but doesn't trace it all the way. Or the long-term psychological impact on veterans, on civilians. He touches on the trauma, but doesn't make it a central analytical theme. These are areas later historians picked up, of course.
Thinking about that legacy, how does Catton's work still shape how we understand the Civil War now? What's its lasting impact been?
Oh, its impact has been immense. Catton's work was hugely influential in shaping the popular memory of the war, really cementing it as this profound moral struggle for freedom.
Fighting against that lost cause idea.
Exactly. It was a powerful counter-narrative to the lost cause mythology that romanticized the Confederacy and downplayed slavery. His relentless focus on slavery's centrality and the war's transformative power. That still deeply influences how Americans think about the war today.
And beyond the historical debate?
Well, the book just vividly captures the human impact, social, economic, even spiritual. The cost, yes, but also the hope tied up in emancipation, the sheer challenge of rebuilding.
Right.
And that lyrical style we mentioned, it conveys both the tragedy and this sense of transcendence. That resonates across generations.
And its continued presence being republished.
Speaks volumes, doesn't it? It plays a role in fostering civic responsibility, prompting reflection on what the Union means, what justice means, what liberty costs in the American story.
Okay, let's try to bring it all together. What are the book's core, profound strengths that make it endure?
I'd say number one is narrative power. His writing is just so vivid, empathetic, often truly poetic. He makes incredibly complex history feel accessible, emotionally resonant, even for people who aren't Civil War buffs.
Right.
Then there's the scholarly rigor. It is popular history, but it's deeply researched. He doesn't romanticize the fighting or the cause. And finally, that moral clarity. He is absolutely uncompromising on condemning slavery and celebrating the Union's cause. But he does it while still acknowledging the brutality, the ambiguities.
But like any single book, especially one with such a clear focus, it has areas maybe left for others to explore more deeply.
Absolutely. That Union-centric perspective stated right there in the subtitle. It's a strength in focus, but it means less room for Southern voices, less depth on the post-war struggles.
Reconstruction, mainly.
Yeah. The book builds towards Appomattox and Lincoln's death as the climax. The massive challenges of Reconstruction get noted, but they aren't explored in the same detail. And while he's sensitive to human complexity, some readers today might want more psychological depth or more explicit counter-narratives. But that's often the trade-off with a sweeping single volume.
So the overall assessment.
Look, this Hallowed Ground is a masterpiece of narrative history. Emotionally powerful, clear in its moral vision. It really remains a benchmark for popular Civil War writing. Catton's skill, his clarity, his respect for evidence makes the book more than just a recounting. It's an enduring meditation on American Union, freedom, and their costs. But that Union focus and the relative brevity on Reconstruction serve as a good reminder. No single book can capture every single facet of such a defining traumatic event. It just can't.
So for someone wanting to grasp the drama, the tragedy, the hope of the Civil War, and how it still echoes today.
Catton is absolutely essential reading. Maybe not the only book you should read, not exhaustive, but an indispensable starting point.
Which leads to a final thought for you, the listener, to ponder. What might a truly reciprocal, multi-perspective history of the Civil War look like today? One that tries to weave in all those threads Catton touched on but couldn't fully explore in one volume.
And if you do want to seek out those deeper or alternative perspectives, there are great places to turn. For primary sources, try Lincoln's speeches, actual soldiers' letters, or dive into the official records of the war.
Okay.
For Southern perspectives, Shelby Foote's The Civil War. A narrative offers a different feel, and James McPherson's Battle Cry of Freedom is a Pulitzer winner too, with a broader scope.
And for the aftermath.
Definitely Eric Foner's Reconstruction, America's Unfinished Revolution, absolutely essential. And David Blight's Race and Reunion on how the war was remembered and misremembered.
And for memory itself.
Drew Gilpin Faust's This Republic of Suffering is a profound look at how the sheer scale of death changed America, all worth exploring.
To provide you with this in-depth critique, we utilized a comprehensive, systematic framework specifically designed to precisely evaluate historical narratives and intellectual works, ensuring a thorough and unbiased analysis of the book.
Right, it helps us look at it from multiple angles systematically.
Remember, for more insightful analyses and to engage with these profound topics, check out Mindful Moments on YouTube and explore our other podcasts. Click the link on screen for the in-depth book analysis. Subscribe, share, purchase via link, and think rationally.